Hi there. The purpose of this screencast is to give students a general overview of what the DBQ, or document-based question, is and how to go about successfully writing such an essay. First of all, what students need to realize is that the purpose of a DBQ is not to test your content knowledge. The purpose of a DBQ is to assess a student's ability to work with the documents and use them as evidence to answer a question. This is an acquired skill. But if you follow the instructions and you go through all of the additional information that your teacher has given you, you can be very successful when it comes to writing a DBQ. The first thing that you need to remember is that there really is no one specific correct answer when it comes to writing a DBQ essay. Your answer is basically how you interpret the documents, which again are the evidence that you're using to support your thesis statement. So as long as your thesis statement is logical and your interpretation of the documents is correct, then your argument is going to be valid. So when you're writing a DBQ essay, there are some steps that you need to follow to ensure success. First of all, you want to make sure that you carefully read the question. What exactly is it asking you to do? A lot of times, for history classes in particular, DBQs will come with extra historical background information. Don't skip that. That's going to give you the context in which the question is being asked. So it's going to give you extra info about a specific event or a time period or a region. And so you want to make sure that you have a strong understanding of that information. As you're going through, perhaps you want to take notes about what the question is, maybe underline the key words, or if you've put it into a document, perhaps you want to underline them that way or highlight them on your computer so that you realize, what is it asking you to do? Does it want you to analyze? Does it want you to explain? Does it want you to compare and contrast? Those are the action words that you want to look for. You want to make sure that you have a solid understanding of any time periods that are being referenced. If something says that you need to write about the 17th century and you write about the 1700s, you're going to be in trouble because the 17th century refers to the 1600s. So understanding time periods and regions are important as well. If an essay asks you to write something about East Asia, which would include primarily China and Japan, and you decide to write about India, you're writing about something that is completely off topic, and therefore you're not answering the question. The next step is to make sure that you are reading the documents carefully. And what that means is you want to have a solid understanding of each document, and that's the basic information, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who wrote it? What is the document about? When did the event, perhaps that's being described, take place? When was the document itself created? Where did this event take place, or where was the person from who wrote it? Why did they write it? What was the purpose? Was it meant to be a government document that's just keeping track of information? Was it a private letter to a friend? Was it a royal decree? Was it a Dear Diary that was meant to never be read by anyone? Was it meant to be biased and persuasive? Was it an editorial, for example? And then by the how, we're looking at what type of source is it? Is it a photograph? Is it a piece of art? Is it a snippet from a newspaper? Is it an official record? The next thing that you need to take into consideration is the author's point of view. Point of view, when it's explained, simply refers to bias, but it really is much more than that. Point of view is how the author sees the world. You and I all see the world in a different way. Think about it as sort of the lenses through which we look at the world. Your gender has an influence on how you see things, your social class, your educational background, your age, your religion, your ethnicity, your job. All of those things influence how you see and interpret the world, and therefore that's going to influence an author's point of view when they're creating a source. If somebody's writing about a war that took place, it matters if they were on the winning or losing side. It matters what class they were in if you're talking about a revolution of some sort. So you need to take those things into consideration. Again, consider the origin of the document as well as whether the document is truly valid or do you think it's hearsay. When you're completing your essay, remember the goal is for you to kind of act as though you're a lawyer. Your thesis statement is your argument. That's the case you're making. You're answering the question. Here are my key points. This is what I think. And then you're using the documents as evidence. All right? Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Think of it that way. So when you're using your essay, a strong essay will use most, if not all, of the documents. Now here's the thing that gets a little tricky for students. You do not simply want to list the documents like a laundry list. You don't want to go through your essay and say, document 1 said this, document 2 said this, and document 3, and summarize all the way through. It says here you should strive to impose order on the documents. So find groupings for documents. So for example, if the prompt says compare and contrast the American Revolution with the French Revolution, maybe one group of documents will be documents that show similarities between those two revolutions. Maybe another group will show differences. Or what you need to remember too is that there's no one way to group documents. Maybe you're going to group your documents based on economic themes or motives. Maybe you're going to group your docs based on political themes or motives. So as long as it makes sense and it fits with your argument, that's how you want to go ahead and group your documents and think about the overall picture that's presented by those documents. Your essay needs to be an analysis of the documents. And that word is in all caps because when you analyze something, it's very different from summarizing a document. Summary just says, this is what the document says and I'm stating it in another way. Analysis is, this is what the document says, and this is how it supports my thesis statement. So you actually have to actively use the documents to demonstrate analysis. Just summarizing doesn't cut it. You always want to make sure that your essay is staying focused on answering your questions. It can be very easy to go off on a tangent, especially if it's a topic that you know more about. But if the essay is saying compare and contrast the origins of the American and the French revolutions, and you start talking about the effects, that's great, and it may be the most well-written essay that deals with the effects that teacher has ever seen, but you're not answering the questions, therefore you're not going to get credit for the assignment. You're going to have to redo it. Some other key things to keep in mind. You should have an adequate introduction. It doesn't need to be long and flowery, and you don't need to have a special quote in to grab the reader's attention. You need to have a strong thesis that answers the question. In your introduction, include key information, key terms from the question. Make sure that you are not speaking in the first person. I'm going to compare and contrast the American and French revolutions. That's not an academic way to introduce the essay. Make sure that your thesis is actually answering the question and that it's dividing the answer into categories. So for example, going back to our American versus French Revolution example, if I'm going to take a look at the causes, I'm going to say that there were similarities in political motives for the cause of these revolutions, similarities in social motives, however, differences when it came to economic causes for these two revolutions. You want to make sure that you are using proper essay style, so think about your 5-paragraph model. An intro, 3 body paragraphs, followed by a conclusion. You want to make sure that your grammar and spelling are not distracting because you have so many errors. And again, no first person. Don't tell the readers, in this essay you are going to learn about, okay? You want to do third person academic language. All right, so next, another thing that students are tempted to do when they're working with documents is to actually just take quotes out of the documents. Quotations demonstrate very little. It shows me that you can rewrite what is in a document. It does not show even really that you can summarize it, and it definitely does not show that you can analyze it. So avoid quotations where possible. Reference the documents if you're utilizing a piece of artwork. As one can see in the painting by whoever, it shows this. Or as one can see from the quote from Thomas Jefferson, without actually quoting it, okay? Remember, you're using the documents. Another key point here in all caps is to answer all parts of the question. If it says compare and contrast, and you only talk about similarities or you only talk about differences and you don't do both, then again, you have not met the assignment requirements because you did not answer all parts of the question. Don't forget a conclusion. It gives you another chance to restate your thesis. And again, you can't simply answer a question just with outside information from the textbook or prior knowledge. You have to use the documents because that is the point of this question. This is assessing a skill that we believe students need to have in social studies, and that's the ability to understand, analyze, and use documents as evidence to support a thesis statement. The rubric that you will typically see associated if it's focusing on writing for a document-based question, it can be seen here, target 1C for social studies. I can evaluate sources or arguments and analyze them through the writing process. And so you can see the different levels of achievement noted there. So real quick, here's a sample DBQ. Typically, you'll have directions that say read and analyze the documents in Part A, then read the directions in Part B and write your essay. For this sample DBQ, our essay prompt is very rudimentary. It says, using the documents, compare and contrast apples and oranges. So let's take a look at our documents. This is our evidence. Document 1, an image of both fruits. First of all, you could use this as a similarity to show that they are both fruit. They both have stems, leaves, they're both round, but you could also use this document to show differences in color as well as texture of the skin. Document 2 gives us nutrition facts for the apple. It shows us calories and cholesterol and vitamin information. You have another document that shows that for oranges, for document 3. So I could use this to note differences in calories. A typical orange only has about 45 calories, while an apple has about 95. An orange also has 85% of your daily required intake of vitamin C, while an apple only has 14%. I could show that both have 0 cholesterol and 0 sodium. All right, so you see how I'm pulling out similarities and differences. I'm pulling out pieces of evidence that help me to answer the question, which is, tell me what the similarities and differences are between apples and oranges. Document 4 here is a definition. It talks about where apples originated, their production, different types of apples. Again, you get a similar type of information, set of information here with document 5, their origins, scientific names, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use this. So I might write a thesis statement using the documents that says apples and oranges are similar in the fact that they are both fruit. However, they are different in their nutritional values as well as their general uses. Okay, and that's my thesis statement. Body paragraph 1, my first point of comparison, I said they're similar, they're both fruit. Okay, and I can use document 5 to support that. It says it's a fruit. And for the apple, I can use document 4. That is also a fruit. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that in body paragraph 1. Body paragraph 2, I talked about differences in color and skin, so I can use document 1 to support that. That's my evidence to show that they're different type of skin. You can eat apple skin, you don't eat orange skin, one's red, one's orange. And then my third point was talking about uses, and again I can go back to, and I was talking about I think nutritional value too. So you can use documents 2 and 3 to support that. Documents 4 and 5 will also talk about some of the different uses for cider and pie and everything else for apples, and juice and marmalade for oranges. Right, so that's how you, generically speaking, use documents as evidence to support your thesis statement. So hopefully this gives you a good introduction to what the DBQ is all about, what the purpose is, and how you generally go about setting up your essay and then writing it. If you have any further questions about the DBQ, please do not hesitate to contact your teacher.